We bring in a friend who we've known for years and years and years. He's an author, relationship therapist, Dr. R.G. Alan Wilson.
Some expert advice on how we can all talk to them. Joining us now is relationship expert Dr. R.G. Alan Wilson. She's the author of Courageous Conversations Connect. Good morning, R.G.
Doctor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Janelle. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And as we mentioned, a lot of people just dealing with anxiety during all of this. What are your suggestions?
Some of the things that we need to remember is that this is temporary. This is temporary inconvenience for long-term gain. And as long as we stay healthy, Janelle, then everything else is recoverable.
Talk to your children about what's happening right now. What are the best ways to do that?
There's some do's and don'ts, right? So you want to tell them that you're going to be here. We're going to be okay. Kids want to know that they're secure and they're safe. So predictability, structure, and consistency. You also want to let them know you have a plan. And even if you don't have a plan, tell them that you're working on one.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. This is yours truly, Dr. RG, and this is January 13th, 2021. This is Courageous Conversations Connect Space, and we are here with you, and we got a lot to talk about today. Goodness gracious, do we have a lot to talk about. So I want to start off with a salute to the illustrious and phenomenal my sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Happy anniversary, 108 years, founded on January 13th, 1913. And so can I just say a whoop to all of our sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and congratulations, my sisters of AKA Sorority Incorporated. Their anniversary is coming up in a couple of days as well. So I just want to give a shout out to them as well. We are all sisters, as well as the young women of Zeta Phi Beta as well. All right. So I see Tyrone on. Good morning, Tyrone. Good morning, Charla. Good morning, Treasure. Good morning to all of my crew out there on YouTube, on Facebook, and then I think we're going to be on IG in a minute. And so, shout out to everyone. We got a lot going on. I cannot believe that last week on Courageous Conversations Connect Space, we were celebrating the win in Georgia with Warnock and Ossoff, and it was the first time in a big red state that a Black man who is the lineage of a sharecropper and a Jewish American man had been voted in a free and fair election. Shout out to Stacey Abrams, who did the darn thing in terms of the grassroots initiative that she launched after she lost, and what she then taught us that, just because you lose the battle doesn't mean that you lose the war. And so we were celebrating all of that. I left you guys. We ended our show, and I went into started seeing clients. Turned off the TV. I usually turn it off and on throughout the day. So I turned it off. I saw that they were in the process of counting the electoral votes, and I turned it off. When I turned it back on 2 hours later, I saw what looked like, something out of a sci-fi movie, something out of there was a binge. We were binging, Morgan and I, on a show over the holiday called The Last Kingdom. That's what it looked like to me. I had no idea. I kind of went downstairs and asked Morgan what's going on. And he said he didn't want to disturb me, but it was very disturbing. We come to find out, as you all know, that it was an insurrection and sedition, and that there had been a call to action to storm the Capitol, which, of course, I'm not on some of the social media platforms. Now I come to find out that there are many others like Parler and what's another one? I forget another one that they talked about on the news. Parler is down. And then there's TikTok. There's so many other ones out there that had this information on there, but I was not aware of it. And so we want to talk this morning. Good morning, Billy Joe. We want to talk this morning about pressure points of power, control, and social influence. Is power always evil and corrupt? Is there a way to embark upon healing? Can you do that without moving towards a greater and fairer and more perfect union where we all have a seat at the table? Is there a way to heal without the justice that many people, brown people and Black people and indigenous people so rightfully deserve? And this particular event that took place where there was an attempted coup to take down the government based on people's belief of disinformation that the election was stolen, even though we all voted in the same manner and the votes came to pass that President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris won free and fair. That's it, right? Those were facts. And yet at the same time, there were lots of people who believed, based on the bullhorn of somebody's president, Donald J. Trump, that the election was stolen. And this was what this was all about. But this was happening. It had been happening for a really, really long time, and we were seeing it in plain sight. So I want us to all talk about that. I see Tanya on. Thank you for morning joining. Hey, my soror, Michelle Jackson. Happy anniversary to you. And then I see Jenny. Hey, Jenny. Good morning. So let's do this. We are going to stay with it. This is going to be a pretty deep conversation. So let's just kind of buckle up so that we can have what we call the courageous conversation, because this whole idea of white supremacy and, the Proud Boys and all of the Oath Keepers, all of those particular organizations, as they said, they're coming for people who don't look like them, who don't act like them. And there's a lot of hatred. And so we want to talk about, is the power always evil and corrupt? Is there a way to have power and do it in the right way that ends up helping people? We want to talk about all that. We're going to take a quick break from our sponsors. We're going to come right back. But when we come back, we're still going to do our breathing. So think about who you're breathing for and put that in the chat. We'll do our breathing exercises and then we'll get into our conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right. I am Dr. RG. Welcome again. This is again January 13th, 2021. This is Courageous Conversations Connect Space, and we're talking about power, pressure points of power, control, social influence, and whether power is always evil or corrupt. In the meantime, I've already said happy anniversary to my illustrious and phenomenal sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I want, we're going to go into our breathing exercises. And so you all tell me who you're breathing for. Right now, as we speak, I turned off the TV, but there are public officials that have been voted into office that are actually embarking on never before historical moment where they are impeaching or pledging to or trying to impeach for the second time Donald J. Trump. That's happening, okay, right now. That's never happened before. I think it's appropriate, quite frankly, when you actually put on a bullhorn and call to action a mob to bring down the government in an attempt to engage in insurrection and sedition and a coup. I think it's appropriate. Nevertheless, y'all tell me what y'all think. In the meantime, when we're breathing, I want to breathe for and shout out to a young man that I did not know of, but I did see when I turned on that TV. Did you all see that young man, Eugene Goodman? He was a Capitol Police officer who the story came out. I was wondering why he was by himself. And the mob was he faced down the mob and he was moving backwards up the steps, running up different flights of steps. And he sort of turned to the left and then turned to the right and moved the mob in the opposite direction. And basically what he realized is that the doorway to the Senate, where they were still trying to get people out into safety, was open. And I don't know whether it's armed or unarmed, but he moved people away. And I think that he's a hero. We so often talk about Black men in ways that are unfavorable. We give the narrative that they're not worthy, Black men are not valuable, that they don't do anything. We really do a job. Not me, but we as a society and culture. And so I want to shout out and give a breath for him, because now that his name is out there, you know what happens? People become targets. And so I want to keep breathing for him. I want to breathe for our public officials that are voting in this impeachment process. And I want to breathe for all of those, again, essential workers, because although it's been not talked about in the last week as much, we still have over 4,000 people dying from this dreaded COVID virus, and more people are getting sick. And so you've got these essential workers out there that are still putting their lives on the line. So we want to breathe for them. Who else? Tyrone said, I'm breathing for my friend and his family and those who stand for justice for all. Awesome. So let's get into our posture. Middle finger to the thumb, or your hand, one hand over the other, or hands to your side. Get your back a little erect. I know I've been a little bit achy lately and feeling like I'm not getting enough breath in. Breath is life, you all. And sometimes we don't take it as seriously as we should. There are many people that are suffering from this virus, and it attacks the lungs first, and they can't breathe. And so we want to build up our lung capacity. And this is one of the ways that you can do it. So when I count to 3, as you all are getting in your positions, I want you to breathe in through your nose, hold it for 8 seconds, breathe out through your mouth. As you do that, we're going to do that 5 times. I want you to also close your eyes and think about breathing in peace and calm and serenity. And I want you to breathe out fear and worry and frustration and even anger. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Feel that in your diaphragm and your belly. One last time, crew. Make it count. Make it count, IG, Facebook, YouTube. Breathe in. And breathe out. All right, that felt good, right? Keep doing that, guys. Keep doing that throughout the day. You'll find that it gets oxygen into your brain, into your essential organs. The blood flow is good. You know, it's better, and you build your lung capacity. Also building up your immune system. We need oxygen to live. All right, so in this conversation, hey, Cynthia, thank you for the wonderful compliment the other day. Know that I'm trying to breathe. She says that breathe with you. But I am at work at Jefferson Hospital making OR rounds. So thank you for that, Cynthia. And also thank you for the work that you're doing. You're one of those essential workers out there doing the darn thing and doing that so that we can be home and safe. So we're breathing for you. And we thank you, and we're continuing to breathe and pray for your well-being and the well-being of your family. Also, Jen, we know Jen is a part of our crew, and she's an essential worker too. So we're making sure that we're praying for anyone that's part of our crew that's out there putting themselves in harm's way. We're breathing and praying for you. Our crew is connecting relationships for epic wins. So let's get right into this conversation, guys. Pressure points of power, control, and social influence. You know, what we saw last Wednesday, I believe, I'll go on the record to say, I believe that was pure evil. And it was based on power and control and greed and corruption. And the reason I put social influence as a part of the title as well is because this disinformation has been spreading in the atmosphere for many, many years. But I would say the last 4 years in the social media spaces and places, there's been a way in which it can move through the airways in milliseconds. And people who don't do their research, people who don't talk with one another, don't find out other information, don't pay attention to their history, they just take the information and do whatever they want, then utilize it as a way. Toya says white privilege, absolutely as well. So when you think about those groups, the group last week, you did not see many Black people. You saw maybe a few, but you really did not see many Black people. What you saw was a lot of angry white people who have enjoyed here in the United States unearned white privilege. What does that look like? All right, let's get into it. You all know we saw it. Stevie Wonder could see it. Everyone saw that. And I don't mean that to be, a shade to Stevie Wonder, because I love Stevie Wonder, but we know he's blind. So I was using that as a metaphor. We saw that those angry white people, many of them who stormed the Capitol to say that they wanted to take back their country, make America great again. I believe it's make America hate again. They did that based on their idea that the election was stolen from them, right? The vice president was in that Capitol at the time. They said things like they wanted to hang Mike Pence and that they wanted to get to Nancy Pelosi. But here's what I don't think any Black person that I know thought was shocking or surprising, which was that had that been a Black Lives Matter event, and I hate to use that comparison because I believe that Black Lives Matter is important and it's real. And many times over the summer when Black Lives Matter protested, it was a honest and peaceful protest. And then there were what they call actors, foreign actors that were infiltrating those protests and leaving bricks in front of windows, throwing bricks into windows, writing graffiti on the walls, and then they would leave the community. So it's not a fair comparison, but for the purpose of this discussion, I think it's reasonable to suggest that if there were Black and brown and indigenous people and Latinx people all up in that mob, then we know, I believe without a shadow of a doubt, that there would have been more bloodshed. There would have been more than 5 people that were massacred, that were killed. There is no way. You can't tell me otherwise. And I don't believe that is a part of this conversation that any of you believe otherwise also. But I want to kind of dial that back a little bit and ask you, how did it impact you to see so many people actually storming the government, trying to shut it down? And many of those Capitol Police, whether they were a part of it or not a part of it, they were overwhelmed. Clearly, they were not prepared. Clearly, they were not ready. Clearly. And as a result, they were literally overwhelmed. So much so that if that police officer, Eugene Goodman, who I believe is a good man, did not do what he did, which was to lead the mob in the opposite direction, they may have taken some of those congressmen, men and women of the judicial branch, they may have taken them hostage. And so again, when you process that in your head, that these persons were able to get away with it, and now they're saying that they're actually going to arrest, and they're looking for, based on, I guess, facial recognition and tips, they're looking for more people who were downloading that information onto social media so that they can arrest them. But we know more people were arrested at the time of the protests in the Black Lives Matter movement right after George Floyd's murder than any of those people. They actually got to go home and lay in their beds and wait perhaps for them to figure out who they needed to go to arrest. And many of them still haven't been arrested. There was an interview that I saw on, I think, Anderson Cooper, I believe. And in that interview, or no, maybe it was Don Lemon. And in the interview, there were two attorneys that were the attorneys for the gentleman who actually posed and had one of the, I guess, for lack of a better term, pieces of furniture from Nancy Pelosi's office. And he was posing and smiling. And the attorney said, that's just not who he is. That's just not who he is. He's a good man and he has 5 children and his wife is a doctor. And I'm thinking to myself, had that been Black or brown people taking pictures and storming the Capitol and throwing and abusing and beating with violence and vitriol police officers, if that had been us, there would have been bloodshed. So I want to hear what your thoughts are and how you felt, because this conversation in this platform is about healing. And I want to get to the healing as well. But I don't think that we can get to healing if we're not able to have the courageous conversation and if we're not able to be real with what happened. So Marie says, one person involved engaged in death by suicide after 3 days of the agony realized what they were involved in. Interesting. I did not hear that. But I had wondered, once people had begun to realize what they, what happened, and maybe once they got home, IG family, you weigh in on this as well as Facebook family, what were their emotions or feelings? I have some thoughts about that as well. Tyrone said the idea that something could be taken from them frightens them. Their identity is tied to privilege, power, and wealth. Without it, they are nothing. And they have a fear of retribution. They're so afraid that we're going to punish them for the past offenses, and that the thought that the new administration will hold them accountable is even more scary. Yeah, Tyrone, absolutely agree with that. I think at the very underbelly of this are two fundamental constructs: hatred and fear. I mean, when you wear shirts that say Camp Auschwitz or 6M, 6MWE, meaning 6 million was not enough. That's what the T-shirts that they had on. They also had T-shirts saying that Jesus is my savior and Trump is my president, right? So they were hiding behind Christianity. And even our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Alan Waller, he talked about his sermon title was Tension, that we can still be Christians. I am a Christian. I know that many people on this platform are of many faiths, and we invite all faiths to participate as a part of the crew. For me, I am a Christian, and I can hold on, as my pastor said, to the tension of what it is that I believe, while simultaneously recognizing that people are hiding behind Christianity, hiding behind the cross, and using it as a way to stoke hatred and violence and vitriol. Cynthia says, it angered me that they were allowed to do it at the same time, but it also angers me that it is taking them so long to react and arrest those involved. Yeah, so I agree with you, Cynthia. When we think about like this anger, we have to figure out a way to harness that anger and use it in order to elevate the mission, right? Bring more people into office, engage in the process. We know the process works, right? Because it worked in Georgia. It worked all over this country because we put the persons in office that we felt would begin to harness and vote for our interest, if you will. Now, there were some Republicans that came into office as well, but we got the majority of our mission accomplished, but mission is not over. We still have work to do. Toya says, there it is. They were our doctors, police, and teachers, people we pay to serve us. That's a really good point, Toya. That is a very good point. That there are more people that they are going to arrest and that they are going to find out are police officers that are sworn to protect and serve, that are doctors, that are people that live in our communities. They are our neighbors. And it's one thing to have a different political view. We all are entitled to that. It is another thing to use your political view to stoke hatred, vitriol, embark on violence, and begin to commit insurrection and sedition. That's a whole different ballgame. That's when you've crossed the line too far. And it's not just those persons that were involved in that mob. You all do know that, right? You all do know that it wasn't just that speech that occurred on January 6, 2021, where Trump and his children, and his lawyers and attorneys, all of his actors within his camp. It's not just that moment when they lit the match. They had been stoking the fire for years, and we all know it because we heard it. We saw it live and in color. And it also is those political officials that have been so scared of their base that they've been willing to make a pact with evil in order to protect themselves. And look where that got them. Mike Pence, just saying. Toya says, or better yet, better yet, our lives are in their hands. Well, I think that to a certain degree, sometimes when we have to go to the doctor or we have to go someplace, but we got to be better stewards of who we hire. And people do it to me all the time. When they're thinking about hiring me as a therapist, I usually have a 20 to 30 minute consultation where they get to ask me questions. We should all do that. We should all be paying attention to who are we hiring for services. If we are the consumer, we need to be careful about the persons that we actually are putting our lives in their hands. If you're in an emergency, maybe you don't have as much of a choice about that. But if you do have a choice, pay attention to who you hire, right? Pay attention to where you're putting your economic dollars, because that matters. Larissa says, I was horrified to see that there were so many lawmakers and professional people involved. Interesting. Yeah, Larissa. I wasn't horrified. I mean, maybe I was horrified, but I wasn't surprised and I wasn't shocked, because they've been showing us who they are for years, specifically in this particular administration. And they've said it. That's one thing that Trump has done, is emboldened people to be very overt with their beliefs and their ideology. And as long as it's lining their pockets, as long as it's elevating their bottom line, as long as they're in charge economically, then, they'll go along with it. It's interesting. Morgan and I were just talking about the fact that there are many companies that are pulling out. One company in particular is Home Depot. Well, Morgan and I stopped shopping at Home Depot a long time ago, because we have the right to put our dollars where we feel like those persons are impacting our interest. So found this morning that the CEO of Home Depot is pulling out, saying this is not what he signed up for. Interesting. I'm still not shopping at Home Depot. And I encourage the rest of us as a part of the crew and outside, even beyond that, to really pay attention to where you put your dollars. Okay. Cynthia says, yes, and that is why I'm here at work, to help those who
we don't want to get this video flagged.
Truly need help.
We don't want to. Hey, excuse me.
Feel good within my.
She doesn't even see me. We don't want to get this video flagged, so please.
Well, I mean, we do have
a right to
our dollars, okay? We do have a right.
But you don't understand,
All right. Yeah. I'll calm myself down.
We are broadcasting not just on Facebook, but also YouTube, and they will absolutely block this stuff. So watch.
Well, I mean,
we want to go there, but we can't go too far off the edge, unfortunately.
Well, that's fine, but I want to be able to speak truth to power, and I want to be able to empower, because one of the things we said, babe, in this conversation is power always evil or corrupt, or can we empower ourselves to make better decisions about who we vote into office, about where we put our economic dollars, about where we live,
about how we educate our children. Those things are important. And I think too often we have decided, or maybe subconsciously, we've just sort of in many ways given up on ourselves and the power that we have. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, white supremacists and those persons who are part of like the Oath Keepers and Proud Boy and all of those white organizations that really want to stay in power and are fearful that they are losing power by the millisecond, they are becoming more and more emboldened. So we cannot be afraid.
Here's just in case, listen, guys, they might have cut off the monetization situation. So please help us out a little bit. If you can cash app something, just something for the show, I would appreciate it. Cash app is Morgan E. Wilson Jr. I'd appreciate I'm putting it in the comments now. Please cash app us something. Okay. I'd appreciate that.
All right. So let's continue to focus on, I have a couple questions for our crew, babe.
Okay.
One of the questions is, when we think about like, how do we, as people who are proud ourselves of being Black and brown and Latinx people, how do we continue to hold on to our power, speak truth to power, and not get caught up in the hatred? I see Brent. Brent is
Brent gonna put something in there now. He gonna put something in
I gotta get ready I get my eyes ready here. So my cousin Brent, hey Brent, good morning. He says the illusion of American democracy has come to light. What happened at the Capitol is exactly how this country started. Everybody loves Hamilton, but overlook the bloodshed that shaped the white America. American democracy has never worked for Black and brown people. The majority has never protected the minority in this country, not for one day. We have to be careful in this moment not to allow Trump blaming to distract us from how 74 million people feel like he feels. Whites have to make decisions. I don't see how far it goes down. I can't read the rest of it. Yeah, he has to make decisions. I can't read the rest of it for some reason. But we get the point of what Brent is making, which is that this is not new, right? We know that January 6th, 2021 is not a new concept. Maybe it's the first time since the 1800s that the Capitol has been stormed, and back in the 1800s it was burnt down. But in terms of what we experience as Black and brown and indigenous people, and even and people of color in the country and perhaps in the world, but we're just talking about in the United States, this country has not held us up. It has not been fair to us. We have not had seats at the table. There has been 401 years of systemic racism. We came into this country not because we were immigrants, right? We were brought here to be slaves. And since day one of landing on this soil, there has been inequity, there has been insecurity, there has been an inability, and there have been policies and procedures that are policies and laws that were enacted to keep us oppressed. That is the reality, and those are facts. So I agree with my cousin Brent that we can't get too distracted. We do have to call it what it is. I think that what Trump, the orange stain that is only occupying the White House for a few more days, it did was he tapped into the underbelly of hatred. And he did that brilliantly for those 70 million people who he felt knew were feeling disenfranchised. I think that this was part of the sermon on Sunday too, with Pastor Waller, who really talked about very brilliantly the fact that many white people were doing very well after the civil rights movement, and they, were able to work, not be educated at higher levels, but still be able to make money and live a really good life. And when that all dried up, this is what we do: we blame, we look for someone to blame. And so there's been a buildup, if you will, of this hatred that is really, as Brent said, how we began. Daryl says, more, you see Daryl? Post that for me. Do you see it? I'm just going to read it. I don't know what you're doing. Stay focused. Don't get baited in their hate, but continue to operate on love. Continue to be the example for what humankind ought to be. Stand up and stand out but monitor how we shout. Oh, I like that. Stand up and stand out, but monitor how we shout. We have to exhibit strategy. I agree with that, Daryl. The strategy is important, and I've been saying to my clients all week that you have to harness the love and light within yourself, and that doesn't mean that you don't stand up. That doesn't mean you don't advocate. That doesn't mean you don't fight. We had a whole series on how do we fight in a way that helps us. But if we harness hate, then it can consume you. It's a very, very enormous emotion that can consume you. You saw what happened last week. That was all about hatred, money, power, and greed and control, and people being fearful because they feel like that they were losing power. Angelique says, this is such a tough situation. We want to speak our truth, but also have to be careful not to anger the powers that be so that the message gets out there. This isn't just for government situations. This is anything pro-Black. They censor our voices, but that doesn't mean we shut up. We must continue to use our voices, write to the papers and magazines, start our own blogs, and create our own. Why does this keep hiding? I don't know what that. And create our own platforms, even. I agree. I think that while it is very sensitive what you say and how you say it, and you don't want to be censored and you don't want to be shut down, but there is freedom of speech. And we just have to figure out how to find that courage within ourselves to speak it in a way, speak truth to power in love. Hold on to the love that we have within our hearts. Hold on to the light. And y'all, if y'all have seen some of my segments, I've been talking about how do you even talk to your own children about this going on? How do you make sense of the nonsense? And one of the things I said was that, go back in your history. Your history will lead you. It will be a guiding light. This is not the first time. You all know we were born. Many of you all that are around our age, Morgan and myself, we were born into the midst of the civil rights movement. We were born into chaos. We might have been too young to really realize what was going on, but we certainly probably felt that energy from our parents regarding all the racial unrest that was happening. And the fight for humanity, the fight for justice, the fight for even the right to vote. Think about that. Only 55 years ago, the Voters' Rights Act was brought into government, right? So what does that mean? That means that prior to that, which a lot of people, it's really interesting that many people don't know that we as Black and brown people did not always have the right to vote. We didn't. So then think about that. Who are the people that were voting? And when they voted people into office, do you think that they voted people in office that were thinking top of mind about Black and brown people? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so as we really begin to envision, and as someone said, strategize, organize, galvanize, think about how we mobilize, it requires that we put some real thought into it, and it requires, quite frankly, that we're healthy. Daryl says, I agree with Angelique. That's why I created Emar Social. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Emar Social. Okay, shameless plug. That's all right, Daryl. That's all right. Available in Month App Store, in Google and Apple. So we're going to probably have Daryl on to talk about his social platform, because all these other folks are creating their own platforms. We might as well create our platforms, and we might, for us to be able to communicate in a healthy way and strategize and figure out what does that look like for us as Black people and brown people and indigenous people and Latinx people and people of color to be healthy. And so Daryl, if y'all don't know, Daryl Montague is amazing. And he is our person that does all of our digital marketing, all of our social media stuff. as well as Brent Marsh, who also is a part of our team, who was my cousin, who I love deeply. And so they are doing the darn thing in their own respective rights. And I believe that, we'll within the context of this platform, have them both on really to talk about the things that they're actually doing in their spaces, because it's about us all coming together. It's about us all making a difference and figuring out how do we collectively make movement. And I want to ask you the question, how are you moving in the midst of all this chaos? Because I've got to tell you, I'm going to be transparent. Even yesterday, I told Morgan I was feeling so anxious, right? And usually I absorb a whole lot, but I was feeling really anxious. And I had to kind of recenter myself. I had to do my prayer meditation. And I had to kind of remind myself that even in the work on a daily basis, that I'm moving in the right direction and I'm doing the necessary things to keep myself healthy so that I don't get consumed with fear, so that I continue to help and make a difference, right? Because we believe at Faith Connects that we're about healing families one relationship at a time and transforming individuals, couples, and corporations one courageous conversation at a time. So fear and faith can never reside in the same space. But how are you moving? What are the things that you're doing? Are you like Brent and are you like Daryl, that you are doing the darn thing? And Angelique actually is on this segment too. We want to feature her because she's created a company where she has essential oil mixtures that really help us to maintain calm. So we're going to be showcasing other people and their brands and their businesses on our platform as well. Think about that with regards to how you move, right? And when I say move, like I mean move in your atmosphere, book in your day with mindfulness, meditation, movement, meaningful engagement like what we're having now, and music. Lorette says, as I want to make sure that I get everyone in, Lorette says, as Christians, we have to keep God in his sovereign place in our lives. Continue to vote for righteousness, justice, and peace. With Darlene Robinson. Hey, Darlene. She says, that's right. And Helen says, good morning. I'm moving around cautiously, but I don't go out often. Awesome. I think we all, quite frankly, have to be a little bit cautious about where we go. This virus is still out there. Y'all might have looked at the Capitol last week and thought that the virus was over. But as you see, more and more of those persons, congressmen and women, women and men are getting diagnosed with COVID-19. The virus is still raging. The virus is actually looking for super spreaders, right? Think about that. That as in the summer, we talked about the collision between the two viruses and that both of them were super spreaders. We're talking about people who are racist, white people that are super spreaders of hate and white privilege ideology, and super spreaders of vitriol about other human beings. And then we got this virus that is looking for a human to attach itself to so that it can spread this nasty virus throughout their body, wreaking havoc on many people. Yeah, some people it's mild symptoms, but other people it means death. So we have to be careful about where we move and how we move, what we say, what we do, how we act, and be able to, model that for if you have children, how to engage with them in a conversation that speaks love and light, truth and accountability. Y'all know we talk about love, light, truth, and accountability equals hope and freedom. Helen says, Helen says, I am currently at the doctor's office. I'm more aware of where I go and the places I go. Well, thank you for reminding us of that, Helen, because the reality of it is we all need to be a little more cautious. They are talking about not just storming the nation's capital in DC, but storming other capitals like Harrisburg and all of the other major cities, states in the republic, if you will. And, they are also talking about just wreaking havoc in the next couple of days to try to prevent this actual swearing in of our new president, Joe Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris. So we need to be cautious. We need to not be out there not paying attention to our surroundings. And meanwhile, in addition to the virus going on, there's still lots of violence in our communities going on. There's a lot of people suffering. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of anxiety. And we're also talking about a lot of, somebody mentioned suicide. Give me a thumbs up for, guys, make sure that you like this post, make sure that you share it, share. And if there are persons that that are unable to watch this in real time, share the video with them. We want as many crew members as possible to participate in what we call this courageous conversation that connects. There's a lot of darkness out there. There's a lot of negative conversations. And yeah, we got to be a little bit, take up some risk here to go deeper into the conversations in order to get to a place of healing. Because if you can't heal what you don't feel, right? And so therefore, we've got to work on our healing and begin to continue to work on making sure that we create a safe space for everyone else. Helen says, oh, she already said that. I already said that. Darlene said the fact that I can have this conversation is absurd, she said. And then Helen says there's a group that has been walking around Harrisburg. I saw it on Steve Kinsey's post, also at Valley Forge. Yeah, right. So here's the scary and insidious part. Before Trump, there was a covert action of these ideologies and these persons. And now it's more overt. People are, the scab has been ripped off and people are out there and they don't really care who knows their particular position. And they're out there creating disruption. That is the goal, to create disruption and chaos. And the good news is I believe that we win. I believe that the persons who are really advocates for democracy and republic and to create what the Constitution really was meant to do, it never fully got to the place where it lived up to what those words meant, but words do matter. And subsequently, I believe that we win. We got to keep going. We got to keep moving. Mark.
Yeah.
Let me read BJ's first.
Okay. Hold on. Let me get it up there. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me get it up. There you go.
BJ says staying focused and not allowing yourself to get caught up in the negativity and jumping on the bandwagon. Be positive and continue to serve your purpose and not lose sight of the good and the positive. That's a good, I think, word for the beginning, the end of this discussion, or moving towards the end of this discussion. And so dovetail on that more.
No, all I wanted to share was that let's not kid ourselves. This is not going to go away. You're talking about 70 million people that voted for Trump. And for you to be that desperate and that emboldened to storm the Capitol and literally come prepared to do bodily harm, put your own self and body at risk, that tells you all you need to know. These are very, very desperate people who feel that they are backed in a corner and they have no place else to go. We have to put our heads around that and come to grips with that. And clearly, I mean, if you did not know that last week, then you know it now. Clearly, these people are desperate. Even basic logic cannot penetrate what's going on. So this is a cult type of situation. And when you have experienced power and privilege all your life, that's all you know. And that very power and privilege is threatening to be taken away from you. People going to do what they feel they have to do, although it may be as warped as all get out, to do whatever it is. That's not going to go away come after the inauguration. And it is a dicey slope here because you got to balance between, do they try to go for the 25th Amendment, which, Pence has already said he's not willing to do that. Even this, so think about that. Here's a guy that came within inches of his life. They were shouting, hang Pence, hang Pence. He still is reluctant and hedgy, and we have our opinions around that because, I think back home, he got answers to some folks. And, he had to protect his family. I'm quite sure there's threats against his family and friends and so forth, and his loved ones in his personal life. So you got to understand kind of pressure it is. He may personally want to be brave, but flip it around to you. You know, if I knew that this woman or this woman right here was in danger, I don't know. You know, if I thought that my actions
too, and her family, there's threats against Nancy Pelosi and many of the other people in their family, and they're still
had that. But you're right, and there's been threat, but it just is what it is. Some people can't get past the fear, and we don't know what their individual family dynamics are. Listen, Pence is all up in there. You know, he is basically, that's his constituency. He lives around them. They don't have no. I mean, you know, I can only imagine what that's like. You know, but you knew what you signed up for. You knew you had plenty of time to abandon ship, and you know that's just what it is. So right now he's under serious pressure, even when his life was in jeopardy. So I don't understand it. I think it's crazy, you know. But I kind of understand why he's, you know, reluctant to you know, put his own family in jeopardy. You know, if it was him personally, then yeah, you know, you take the leap. I don't know. Would you? That's a question.
Would I? That's a question
to you and even the audience that's watching. Would you, with your family?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. You know.
So somebody type in, would you, if you knew that, you know, a decision you had to make would put your family in jeopardy, could you be brave enough to make the decision, even though your wife, husband, children, siblings might be in jeopardy and their life might be threatened?
Well, I mean, that's what people are going through every day, Morgan. And, you know, you taught me, you said, you know, I'm just going out swinging. So we just go out swinging together. You know,
I ain't talking about me. I'm talking about the Pence. I'm talking about other people. Would you do it? Daryl said yes.
Daryl said yes. Sometimes you got to make a stand.
Exactly. I get it. You're right. I wouldn't. There's no way in the world. You know, I mean, listen, I'm going out. You know, this is what it is. You know,
I think if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Tanya said, protect my family. Okay. So it's a very personal decision. You know, everybody is very personal decision. You know, that's why I'm asking people to type in. What would you do? What would you do?
Well, you know, and you know, this is similar. Well, that's not similar. It's not similar. But there have been decisions that we all have had to make since this pandemic in March of 2020. Whether you wear a mask or whether you don't, whether you go to a social event or whether you don't, everybody has their own decision, and we have to honor people's decision. But people have to figure out. And Billy Joe said,
Billy Joe said, protect my family.
Lorette said, yes, sacrificial love. So there's different perspectives on both sides of the crew, and that's okay. That's what diversity is all about: making a decision that works for you, and for us to respect that decision, just like the vote, right? That's what democracy was all about.
Yeah, Helen says I will protect my family regardless of who it is.
Okay.
You know, so this is what you're talking about, and that's what's been happening with this Republican Party. You got to understand, they got to go home, and that's what I've been saying to you all along. They got to go back home to their constituency, their neighbors. So just like those Capitol Police, who they say are sympathetic, well, is it sympathy or is it just, hey, look, I live next door to Billy Joe Bob, you know?
Don't use Billy Joe's name.
Well, okay. Sorry, not Billy Joe, not you, Billy Joe, but I live next door to whoever, whatever, you know, John, Jim.
You know about that Home Depot comment.
Yeah, John, Jim. I live next to John, Jim, whatever. You know, I got to go home, and if I kill him or hurt him, whatever, I mean, listen, that's really what it is. The pressure back home, and their neighbors, their friends, their fellow church members, so forth. Remember, a lot of them are white evangelicals, you know. So you know
that's a good point. Billy Joe said, "Ha ha ha." That's a good point Deborah made. She said it's easy to say what you would or would not do before you have to. I think that's a very relevant point. That sometimes we just don't know until you're put in that situation what you would actually do. And I think that to a certain degree, we have to recognize that and try to be a little bit more gracious with people about the decisions that they're actually making and not so judgmental. Cynthia says God and family first. She says God and family first. Mm-hmm. So everybody has a different decision.
It's a tough question.
It might change. Everybody might have a particular place they land on, and then that could potentially change because we're living in a society that's constantly in flux, constantly moving. Decisions have to be made on the fly, and you don't always know what you would do. But I still think you need to think about it. And then, if the situation arises where you have to make a decision and split second, then you make that decision. Helen said, "Amen."
Yeah, I mean, listen to, I mean, the depths of how entrenched and how much Kool-Aid these individuals are drinking. Here you are, you're in a crowded room, hiding for your life, and in that moment, your fellow congressman asked you to put a mask on, and you absolutely refuse. And then it comes out 2-3 days later that you have infected many of your fellow congressmen and women because you refuse to put a mask on. They talking about now 3 other people got infected that day. They can clearly trace it back to when the infection and spread happened, and then now they're fighting because they're now putting up metal detectors in the entrance going into the building and to the Capitol, and now they fight. They were actually literally the very people that were trying to save their lives the other day. These congressmen and women were pushing and shoving and cussing them out because they demanded that they go through the metal detector. These are seriously warped people, and you would say that that's some level of mental illness. Would you not say that?
I would say that there's certainly some mental issues. I want to go so far to say mental illness, but I would definitely.
Well, I'm not saying it. I mean, but I mean, there is some sort of, I don't know what cognitive issue, or to be led down a path to that extent, where you aren't open to hearing any level of rationale for.
I think hate is also a
it's
mental
a
health
sickness.
issue,
It's a
right?
toxin. It's poison.
I think, but I want to. I don't know if you're finished more, but I want to. We're wrapping up to 11, and I know I got to start seeing clients at noon. So I wanted to read an excerpt from Courageous Conversations as a way for us to transition for this week, if that's okay. And the segment that I want to read is called Peace, because I do think with all that's going on, I think that in the midst of trying to process all of these points of pressure, that we do need to harness our own peace. And that's what I wanted to end on. So if you have something else you want to share?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So this is page 185. It's entitled Peace. And it says, be thankful for the ability to access your peace from inside out. Have you ever thought about where your peace is? Is it hiding in plain sight, or perhaps hiding in the shadows, unwilling to reveal itself to you? Maybe your peace has been there all along, just waiting for you to say hello and embrace it as a familiar friend. We all have the ability to access those gifts that reside inside of us, yet we sometimes make choices to give our gifts away and those who don't value us the way that we're deserving of. It's important to recognize that the ways that you harness your peace and protect it so that you can access it whenever you need to relax, to calm, to prepare you for the next obstacle that comes your way. You have the ability to access your peace that surpasses all understanding, which comes with the harness that life, or the awareness that life can always be a lot worse. So that's what I kind of wanted to leave you all with. If we're here, that's a blessing. If we're breathing, it's a blessing. If we're safe, it's a blessing. If we've not gotten sick yet, or if we've gotten sick and we've recovered, that is a blessing. Harness your peace. Protect your peace. Spread your peace. And embrace your peace. We got a lot of work to do. This isn't over, as Morgan said. We do know that we are fighting for our humanity and for democracy. But remember, we win. So hold on to that in the midst of this. Maybe we're in a storm. Maybe, and we are in a storm, different boats, but we win. We get the victory in this. And you got to hold on to that and not get caught up in the hatred and the vitriol, because that can eat you up from the inside out. This is our crew. We're connected with each other. I want to make sure that we all stay connected with each other. And I know you all will be watching, the coverage or what have you with the impeachment. But in the midst of that, just hold on to your peace. And one more time, I want to say happy anniversary to my illustrious sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. 108 years, that's a long run. And we're still providing sisterhood, scholarship, and service. So happy anniversary, sorors, and have a beautiful day from my heart to yours. I love you guys. Nothing.